Hi, this is Heather from EasyHealthyBread.com. In this week's episode, we're going to make a delicious whole wheat biscuit recipe. It's a little different than what we've been making before, so I thought I'd give it a shot. We're going to start by putting our sifter straight into the bowl. We're using 2 cups of whole wheat pastry flour, so it's a little different than what we've used before, and we're just going to measure out a cup. The pastry flour just helps keep this recipe light. With biscuits, you want them to be nice and light and fluffy, so the pastry flour is just a thinner grind, and so that will help with that. So we're just going to do 2 cups, measure with our typical scoop and sweep method. Bam, right into the sifter there. Then we're going to add 4 teaspoons of baking powder. This is what creates the rise. There's no yeast in this recipe, it's just baking powder. So 4 teaspoons, also right into the sifter. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. You are not going to want to leave the salt out of this recipe because it works with the baking powder. So put it also right into the sifter, and we're going to sift it all together, and that's just going to mix it up and keep everything from clumping. Like I said, we want this to be nice and fluffy, so sifting it kind of helps guard against those clumps. So here we go, mix it in. You see it's nice and fine. Right into your big bowl. I definitely would recommend using a little bit larger of a bowl, just because then it's a little less messy. Kind of can contain everything and you don't get your counter so dirty. Let's see. So looks like we're just about done there. There we go. So we got all of our dry ingredients in the bowl here. Now we're going to cut in the butter. So the butter is what makes biscuits flaky. Those layers in your favorite biscuits, it is the butter that has melted. So you want chilled butter. We're going to cut it into pieces, just carefully. Each piece just goes right in. And the chilled butter just makes it so it stays solid. We actually don't want it to melt or anything in there. We want there to be, when we finish here, there to be like pea-sized chunks of butter kind of mixed in with the flour. It'll be kind of a crumbly mixture. In a lot of biscuit recipes or recipes that use the same method, like with chilled fat in there, they say until it looks like cornmeal. I never really kind of understood what that meant, but it just means that like you have smaller pieces of your fat in there and they're kind of mixed in and crumbled up in there. Okay, so we're almost done here. And then we're going to use kind of a neat tool that if you make a lot of biscuits and stuff, you might have, or other pastries, and this is just a pastry tool. I actually got mine at the dollar store. So what we're going to do is just push it in to break up the butter. And it's just going to make the butter come in a little bit smaller pieces. You're going to get this stuck a lot, and you can just push the butter out and then go back to the bowl and keep going. So we're just looking for this to get small pieces of butter. And it's not really going to look all that different than when you started. But, I mean, I certainly don't know why it would look like cornmeal. That always really annoys me in recipes where they're like, oh, it'll look like this, but I don't know what that looks like, what they mean. So I guess that's why I decided to do videos, so you can really see what we mean in different recipes. So, okay, we got this pretty, most of the butter clumps in here are pretty small. And now we are going to get to the fun part. So in this next part, we're just going to add 1 cup of buttermilk. That's the last ingredient. And you just want to keep in mind as you're going through the rest of the recipe to work the dough as little as possible. Unlike bread, you're not trying to develop the gluten in the flour. You want it to be nice and light and fluffy. So you want to work the dough as little as possible. So we're going to add in 1 cup of buttermilk. And we are going to stir it until it is just incorporated. So I'm just going to take the spoon and just stir it just a little bit. It's starting to come together, starting to get a little goopy. If you decide to use a mixer, like your hand mixer, after you've cut in the butter, just go really slow, stop and start it. But I think that it's such a quick mix that you're really going to want to just use your spoon. It's probably going to be the most efficient and cause the least dishes, which is always nice. So now that we've got it kind of together, we're going to flour up our hands, and we're going to knead it right in the bowl for 8 to 10 times. So I'm going to flour up my hands, and we'll be right back. So you can see I've got my hands nice and floured up, ready to go. So you can see we're just going to kind of help the dough kind of come together because it's still pretty crumbly. But you're really going to want to get your hands floured because the dough is pretty sticky. So keep adding flour to your hands if you need to. So we're just going to kind of turn the dough, form it into a ball. If you've ever made pie crust, it's kind of that same fine line you're watching of working it too little or too much. That's why you'll never see me make pie crust, because I'm terrible at it. So it looks like it's kind of together now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a little flour on my counter here, and I'm going to turn this out right onto my counter. Let's see if I can make enough room here. So I'm going to put a little flour down, just using my same whole wheat flour. Just kind of sprinkling it down. I'm going to lift this out, put it down, blammo. Get a little bit more from in here. So you see it's still pretty crumbly looking, but that actually is going to lead to a better texture for your biscuits. So we're going to do a couple more kneads in here. Like I said, you don't want to work it too much, but you do want it to be together. So we're just going to take the edges, fold them in, pat it in, take another edge, fold it in, pat it in. If you're seeing a lot of flour caking on your dough, that's okay. You can pick it up and tap it off if you were really heavy-handed with the flour on your counter. But if you're not, it will stick. So it's kind of, you just kind of have to deal with it. So here we go. We've kind of got our dough ready to go here. Now we are going to pat out the dough. So you're going to want to pat to the thickness that you want your biscuits to be. They'll rise a little bit. So between 1/2 inch and 3/4 of an inch, just pat it out. And try and do it kind of quickly, because like I said, you don't want to work the dough too much, so kind of just go for the gusto here. So there we go. What I usually do is I just use the bottom of a glass. If you have a cookie cutter, you can use that as well. So I usually kind of plan it out to try and make the best use of it. So I kind of put in where I think I'm going to do them, and you want to put them just right in next to each other, because when you push it down, it's going to expand a little, so you'll have plenty. You'll be able to overlap a little bit, actually, when all is said and done. So I kind of go around and do that, and just plan on getting as many out of there as I can, because you don't really want to re-roll the dough. You want to get 90% of your biscuits in one shot. So because of that, I'm not afraid to have some biscuits that are half moon shaped, because it just makes them a little tough to re-roll the dough. So like this one on the end here, it's going to end up being like a little bit small, but that's fine. So I take my glass, dip it in some flour so it doesn't stick, and I just, down I go, and down I go. So dip it again, down it goes, let's dip it again, and you want to kind of have a little bit of space right here, because the dough is going to expand a little bit when you push it down like that. So it's going to end up being fine. So like you can kind of overlap like that. So you can see like that's where I planned it, but you can use a little bit more efficient that way. And so once I'm done with this, we're going to move these onto a parchment lined baking sheet, and we're going to cook them for about 10 to 12 minutes, and then we'll be done. So I'm going to put these on the sheet and pop mine in the oven, and I'll show you what they look like when we take them out. Hi, we're back. So I pulled the biscuits out of my 450-degree oven. Mine ran for about 11 minutes. You pull them out just when they're starting to get a little golden brown on the top, and we're going to cut one open. So there you see a delicious biscuit on the inside there. Going to be super great for dinner tonight. So I've really enjoyed making this video for you, and I really hope that you've enjoyed it as well. I know that you can switch out your white biscuits to whole wheat from now on, and your family and yourself are going to love the difference. So thanks for watching.